So, this is another Worcestershire Ambassadors podcast. I'm Steve Perera, one of the board members of Worcestershire Ambassadors. And we're interviewing today Stephen Vaughan, who is the current CEO of Worcester Warriors. And we're going to talk a little bit about Stephen's background, but also the plans for Worcester Warriors going forward. So welcome to the podcast, Stephen. And so I suppose we'll just dive straight into it. So for those of our listeners who don't really know much about your background, can you give us a quick overview of your journey to becoming the CEO of Worcester Warriors?
Yes, I can. Thank you. I'll try and keep it brief, but local, grew up in Birmingham. Football was my initial love, played professionally, albeit for Walsall back in the day. Took on professionally, but didn't make it after that. Injuries and acute lack of talent put paid to that career. So played non-league football for the next 15 years. Stourbridge, Bromsgrove, Marine up in Liverpool and all the rest of it. So very sporty. My rugby career is limited to school. Played a couple of times for Old Halesonians in a brief couple of games down at Carmarthen Quins, bizarrely, but I was never anything other than a trier. Really, that wasn't my game. But
what position?
Me, outside centre. I was fairly quick, and I was a bit of a coward, so maybe even quicker actually. But always loved rugby. Grew up watching Moseley at the Readings. My old PE teacher knew that I liked rugby as a kid, and used to take me down to watch Moseley at the Readings. And I love local rugby. I watch Bromsgrove when I can get around there, and I've got a couple of games I want to go and watch locally as well, Droitwich and Old Luctonians and a few others. I love local rugby. But it's a background briefly, bit of football. Long story short, I then, having been to Loughborough University, worked for Thomas Cook. Back in the day, I became a MD of their specialist businesses. I then became MD of the retail businesses, and we grew that business massively. We bought Co-op Travel and 18 Mays back in the day, it was called, and expanded. I then left there and went to work on London 2012 for 5 years, which was my kind of segue back into sport. And then I was asked to go and work at Gloucester Rugby as CEO in 2012 at the end of the Olympics, which was brilliant. Loved it. Had best part of a decade at Gloucester, had a really, really great time there, doing lots of stuff around trying to make the business sustainable whilst trying to create a high performance environment. They'd had a tough time, and we got into the playoffs a couple of times, always in the Heineken Cup most years. We kind of upgraded lots of things around the stadium, training facility, but got to a point where probably took it as far as I could, to be quite frank. But had a brilliant time. Still have a soft spot for Gloucester, as did the family. And still keep in touch with a lot of the guys down there. And then I was asked to go to a bigger project at the Rico Arena, which was. There was rugby involved, but the actual role itself was probably 80% non-rugby because of the size of the arena, casino, hotel, which was a bit of a segue away from sport. But obviously Wasps men's team, women's team, netball as well. So lots of new and diverse angles there. Unfortunately, that business was in trouble. Not surprisingly, not dissimilar to Worcester, London Irish, Jersey and Newcastle, really, which would have gone bump if it was located somewhere else. It was given an IV drip by the RFU for 3 years to keep them going. It got to a point where effectively the owner took on way more debt than they could manage. COVID hit, and although the business was very, very successful, so the arena itself was making multiple millions a year. Great location. We bought Coventry City back as well. We'd bought Coventry Building Society Arena in as a naming rights partner. So from a trading perspective, it was brilliant, absolutely on fire. But unfortunately, the legacy debt that had been brought in years before meant that it could never survive, unfortunately. So it didn't get refinanced. We managed to save the arena, save those jobs, sell that, at the time to Mike Ashley and Fraser's, who again popped up in my career when I was at Yorkshire Cricket, which I'll tell you about in a second. But unfortunately, Wasps went the other way. But we, all of the players and staff managed to get themselves other roles. So really, really difficult part of my career. Never had to do that before, and felt a little bit. It was difficult. You could see what was happening. You could see how well everything was trading, but you couldn't do anything about it because of the debt. And having the likes of Joe Launchbury and Jack Willis and Dan Robson and all these wonderful players, in tears effectively because they loved the club so much. Was so much more difficult than than any of the other fallout around it. To be honest with you, I then got asked to go to Yorkshire Cricket. Yorkshire Cricket, if for those that don't know, was in a really bad way. They'd been subject to racism allegations that saw them lose their Test match status. They saw that a lot of players leave. All of the sponsors pretty much left. And it was in the doldrums. And I think I probably turned the role down 5 times, but everything I kept asking them for, they kept giving me. So I said, right, let's give it a red hot crack, as they say, and actually loved it. It was brilliant. Yorkshire's a great county, brilliant people. I mean, the size of Yorkshire Cricket, if you don't know, it's 5 times bigger than any other county in terms of cricket in the country. There are more cricket clubs in Yorkshire than there are in Australia. Wow. But it needed some TLC. It needed somebody from outside in who hadn't played 100 Test matches for England and everything else to come in with a fresh pair of eyes. And actually, once we got into it, we worked on a lot of the policies, the governance, the EDI. Things slowly started turning the corner. We got promoted out of the 2nd division into the 1st. The ECB signed us off as a kind of platinum club in terms of our governance, and sponsors started to come back. We then hosted the Ashes, which was incredibly successful. And then I was only supposed to stay there for a couple of years, but we managed to bring in a new ownership group, which it desperately needed. And that ownership group asked me to stay on for an extra kind of 6 to 8 months. So I did that, kept things steady. We then started the initial ball rolling on selling the 100 franchise, which ended up being sold to the Hyderabad Sunrisers for £100 million. So I left it in a really, really great state. Still got a lot of friends there. And in fact, I was only talking to members of their board this week about when they come down to Warwickshire and Worcestershire, and we're going to catch up. So did that, really enjoyed it, but commuting up and down to Leeds was not great when you've got a young family and a couple of dogs and whatever else. So then started doing some consultancy with some football teams, some businesses locally, and then I got a call from Christopher Holland, who's the owner at Worcester Warriors, who I'd had a brief dalliance with in the past when we were at Wasps together, but Chris was kind of located elsewhere to me, working in a different part of the business, sort of building the training centre, which Birmingham City now lease from us. But I think we're similar kind of spirits in terms of, quite entrepreneurial, understand the price of a pint of milk, but, enjoy working in elite sport. And Chris asked me to come in for a couple of days to look at 3 things. One was to look at how I could help bring Worcester Warriors rugby team back into professional rugby. Obviously, I'd been in that circuit previously and had a lot of contacts, both PRL, Premiership Rugby, the RFU, which is our governing body, players, coaches, and knew my way around there.
Yeah.
Second piece was how to get the venue operating in a slick, efficient and sustainable manner with a very, very small group of people here. So probably people that, we're talking to on these podcasts now will understand this. How do you make a pint of beer with a half a pint of ingredients? So how do you pull every lever you can to make that happen? And the third piece is to help with the conversations around the planning for the development at Sixways. And for those that don't know, we've just had planning given on a number of things. So the outline planning is for EV charging units, paddle tennis courts, hotel, some light industrial, some drive-throughs, and potentially a hotel at some point as well, in different phases.
I was going to say, sorry to interrupt. So how long do you see it taking for those developments to come to fruition, to be finalised?
Yeah, I guess it depends how we decide to slice and dice it. So we're in the planning stage at the moment. So to be completely blunt, if somebody decided to come in and wave a massive check around and say, right, we want to give you all this money for all of that land, blah 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 blah, I assume it could be done tomorrow. You know, to be black and white. That's not really where we're at. The wider plan is that, you know, we've got a longer kind of view of this and a different glide path, and we want to use the finances that come through from the development. Sorry, I'm using my hands. I'm pointing to where it is.
That's all right. Yeah.
To bring in some sustainable yield to help fund the rugby club going forward. So the first things first, we don't want one single point of failure again. Worcester Warriors supporters and sponsors and the community and the North Midlands RFU, etc., they don't deserve to be in a position again where there's a boom or bust, where on the whim of an owner, the club can go bump tomorrow. So we're not having that. We're not doing it. It's not a good way to run a business. And we look at the Premiership rugby clubs, pick 8 of the 10 are all only in, you know, they're only operating at the moment due to the generosity of an ultimate beneficial owner. That is not good at all. So we're not going there. So the development in time will fund the rest of the business. So that could be long leases with a yield. It could be selling chunks off, etc. But to answer your question, we would hope that in this calendar year, we could start to look at getting some kind of spades in the ground. If I was a betting man, having worked with developers before and council, etc., I think it'll probably be going into next year before we start that. But, you know, in the next, I would have thought next 12 to 18 months, and kind of make no apologies for being a little bit vague. We've had so many promises already, and then some other official will come in and say, well, you now need to go to this committee. We've now got to put a hiatus on it while these guys look at it. Mr. and Mrs. Miggins in Droitwich aren't happy about the fact that there might be more traffic going. You know, there's all of that going through, but it's real. It's happening. Chris's background is property and development. This isn't a kind of, you know, the conversations that may have happened in the past. So just funneling back in, 3-legged stool, rugby, development and venue. And my 2 days a week that I told you about became, could you do a little bit more? Could you do a little bit more? So I then had to have a really honest conversation with Christopher Holland and say, look, I've got to go in 2-footed in this or not at all, because from a personal perspective, and probably people on this podcast will understand this as well, I was being asked by other organisations to do either full-time roles, or could I do 9 months at this or 6 months at that? But that didn't mean 9 months on a Monday and a Friday and a Tuesday. So I said, look, we've either got to do the proverbial or get off the pot here. So we had a conversation around it. It's a really cool project. Lots and lots of challenges, obviously, when you start a new business up again. And every time we opened a drawer in the venue, it was costing us 50 grand every time. You know, we'd open that stand. Oh my God, that kitchen's decommissioned. That's going to cost. Those boilers have gone. Those floodlights don't work. The rest goes on and on and on. You can't legislate for those things. So I'm not trying to put a hazy, rosy glow on this, but there aren't that many cool projects at the moment around where you've got the development opportunity. We've got this unique story about a once great rugby club in a really great rugby city coming back again, and the ability to try and get the venue rocking and rolling as we will be. You know, we've got tenants in here, Worcester City Women, we've got special educational needs school in here, and unashamedly, we will be more commercial going forward. You know, we've got 2 concerts that we'll be announcing in the next 2 weeks. We've got a whole Sixways summer series of events, and I make no apologies for that. You know, one thing doesn't happen without the other. Our supporters have been incredible in their numbers. Our sponsors have been amazing, but we've still got a long way to go to get to financial sustainability.
Yeah.
And from a personal perspective, you know, I live 15, 20 minutes away. So rather than Leeds and all the rest of it, it works for me personally as well. And at my my time of life now, I've still got a bit to go, but I'm not 21 anymore. I place a different value on the ability to go home every night, to spend time with my family, to go walking in the Malverns, Licky Hills, Clent, Waisleys, wherever, with the dogs. And I guess over the years, experience kicks in, and you say, actually, that is really good for me personally, mentally. So that's a kind of potted kind of journey as to why I'm here full time.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thanks for that. I mean, I was going to ask about what appealed to you about taking the role at Worcester, but I think you've articulated that already quite a bit. And actually, for me, listening to what you say, I'm quite excited by the plans, and I think it is quite an interesting project because, as you kind of said, the model that you're looking to build is one that isn't in place in the other Premiership teams, other rugby teams across the country. So it's quite an interesting project, I imagine. And the fact that you're going to make it a sustainable business. I mean, given what the local supporters have gone through here at Worcester, for Worcester Warriors, I suppose that's music to our ears, because we want to see the club successful, but on a sustainable basis, so that it can, we don't go through what we went through before. So, okay, so how would you describe, I mean, obviously the responsibility of leading a club? I mean, I've talked already a little bit about, I mentioned there, just touched on that Worcester Warriors is quite important to the city and to the county. So how would you describe the responsibility of leading the club that means so much to the city and the county as a whole?
Yeah, well, it's an interesting one, really. And it's quite a dichotomy, because when we were bringing the club back, and I literally sat in a room next door on my own with a pen and a pad, genuinely, in March, so a year ago, we didn't have a coach, we didn't have a player, we didn't have a medic, we didn't have a strength and conditioning coach, we didn't have food, we should have done a document. Genuinely, in hindsight, we should have made a documentary of it. And then we go through this piece of work where I had a rough idea what success looks like. But when you're at Gloucester Rugby, for example, and you've got, David Humphreys and Johan Ackerman, and, you've got a team full of, Johnny May and Ed Slater and, England internationals and
players,
and all this sort of stuff. It's different. You've already got that, but we didn't have anything. So, so I sat there, and, I live in Bromsgrove. 2 or 3 of our box holders live quite near me from the farming community. When I go to the gym, I'll go for a pint or whatever else. People were talking to me about it all the time. So, rest assured, you whenever you are working in sport, it is so different to working in normal industry, because you don't, when I was at Thomas Cook, or when I was at Land Rover, or wherever back in the day, you don't take it home with you. But the emotion of sport is so different. Yeah. So the responsibility isn't just around what you talked about in terms of having a sustainable business going forward. So people have got rugby here. We're going to be launching an academy this year. We've just launched our community program. So people see the cherry on the top, which is a great win away at Cornish Pirates, and it's brilliant.
Yeah.
What people don't see, actually, are the 500 kids that are coming to the Bedford game on the pitch before the game at half time. Their mums and dads having a great time. They don't see the fathers turning up with tears in their eyes at the first game that we had with their daughters, and so those things sit with you. It gives you hairs on the back of the neck. And genuinely, you don't get that in a lot of other businesses. So the responsibility is real. It hits you hard, and it probably makes you work harder, work longer, be more emotional sometimes. And it's probably one of the reasons why owners generally make decisions that they would never make in normal business. But with Christopher as an owner, we have a good yin and yang, really. Chris has got a military background, M&S, John Lewis, he's very binary, tens, hundreds and units, and that's exactly probably not me, really. So I'd probably bring a different
complementary skill sets.
Yeah, skill set to Chris, and hopefully it works. But the dichotomy is around responsibility. we know we've got responsibility locally, and that's to everybody. It's to our sponsors, it's to the supporters that have stuck with us. You know, we bring about £30 million DVA to Worcester in a year as well, with taxis and restaurants and hotels and transport and all of that good stuff as well. So it's
absolutely
local economy, and that's only going to grow, by the way, when it becomes a real destination. But but the dichotomy is this: we had lots and lots of people just say, "Look, it's amazing that you're back." People only think about the rugby. Actually, most of our contributions don't come from rugby. Rugby's played here 15, 16 times a year. We're open 350 days a year. Conferences, events, you name it, weddings.
Absolutely,
So today we've got kids playing football on the pitch all day. We have to keep, it's like an aircraft. With nobody on it, it doesn't make sense. So, but we know what the veneer is. It's the rugby. So we have an inordinate amount of people saying, look, we just want rugby back. We don't care what level it's at. Just get it back. We don't care if it's level 8, it's level whatever. Well, we could have brought it back at level 10. We could have paid no rugby creditors. That would have saved Chris a lot of money, by the way, a lot. And that's been a really, really tough process, because it's emotional, because people that used to be here weren't paying what they would get, what they thought they were due. Sure. But of course, the communication and the information they have was severely different to what we were given legally, so that then becomes a difficult conversation. But we're done with that now, barring one or two which are kind of in arbitration. But so anyway, going back to the point, people would say, look, just come back, and that was great. You turn up, you play your first game, full house. You play your next game, full house. Then you lose a couple of games on the trot around Christmas, and suddenly the ethos changes a little bit. People have got used to it again, and then the comments are different. It's, why did you play him? Why are you kicking the ball away? Why are you running it too much? And everybody becomes an expert. By the way, I'm not having a go at the Worcester fans. This is global, okay?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
I'm a supporter of teams. I do the same. So this is, I'm not holier than thou. So normality sets back in again, and the kind of ethos of we're just happy it's back. We knew this was going to happen. Goes out the window, and it's right. When are we going to be in the Premiership?
Yeah,
we're going to sign him. So the balancing act that I certainly have as CEO here, and the responsibility I have, is to be really honest and upfront with people. And hopefully anybody that has come to a fans forum or heard me speak will back this up. What we are not going to do is to spend the same as some other people in this league, make inordinate losses and get the club and the business back into a really difficult spot. Okay, really quite simple. We will spend what we have coming in. We're not trying to make money here. We do want to be a sustainable business. Okay, at the moment the venue loses money because the ripple effect of going to administration 3 years ago when they did has meant that other businesses walked away, taken other businesses, etc. That's now turning. It's a brilliant venue. You've been here a million times. Right off the M5, great Wi-Fi, parking, superb view.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Way better than where I've worked before. We've just got to now nurture that, and we're going to be employing some people who are going to help us in that area. From a rugby perspective, we want to try and hold and maintain what we have in terms of, there won't be 20 players going and 20 players coming in. There will be minimal ins and outs, because one of the areas where we know from a performance perspective where we've probably lacked is versus other teams that maybe have beaten us, is they've been together for years. We didn't even probably know our best team until recently, because we've had to try so many different, partnerships and all the rest of it. So I think there's growth within that. But yeah, so the responsibility is real. The responsibility is, we are passing through at some point. Okay, as invested as we are, and we really are, we will never be as invested as the person that came here with their granddad and their dad, and now they're bringing their kids. It's impossible. It's impossible. We think we're super invested, but at some point we won't be here. We'll probably still come back and watch and all the rest of it, but the fans will be here forever. So we know that we are here for a period of time, whether that's a year, 10 years, 20 years, and we want to do the very best and leave it in a much better place whenever we can as a legacy. But to do that, we have to be really honest with people and say, look, you might be asking why we're not going to kick in at this point and why we can't do this and the other. And we're really, really honest with people. We will do that. We want to win every game that we can play. We want to get into the Premiership and all those things. We won't do it at all costs. So the responsibility is massive, but at the same time, the responsibility is for us to not lie, not going to a point where potentially in the past people have said, we're going to do this, we're going to be winning the Heineken Cup in the next 3 years, etc. We will be a sustainable club first. We will try and build and win every game and play at the highest possible level we can, whilst building the development and building the business to be sustainable. And we hope that people stay with us. And we're trying to put a brilliant match day experience together with fan zones and kids on the pitch after the game, and really trying to go back to the basics of why people love rugby. So whether we win or lose, people can come and say, do you know what, we had a great time. And hopefully we can build that new database and fan base, as well as the kind of supporters that have been here for many years.
Brilliant. Thanks for that. So I mean, you talked obviously during that about a number of different challenges that you've had to deal with since you came on board. If you had to choose one challenge as being the toughest out of all of them, what would you say was the toughest challenge of getting involved in the club?
The toughest challenge, there's probably one or two. I would probably say one of the toughest challenges was actually bringing the rugby club back, fundamentally, physically bringing it back. There's been lots of challenges around, it's been a lot more expensive exercise than we thought it was ever going to be. Right. Because, and thankfully, our commerciality around the rugby, when I came in and looked at the numbers, the information was we'll probably sell about 1,500 season tickets and then hopefully get a few more in on match days. We sold 1,500 on the first day, and it was nearly 5,000. So we're very much out of kilter with some of the other champ clubs, really. So we're a bit of a Prem club stuck in the wrong division, really. Yeah. But it's been brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And I don't mean that in any way. There's some amazing clubs, Coventry and Ealing and Bedford and Nottingham and Cornish Pirates. Fantastic, and I'd really love them to be in a position to get promoted as well. But I'd say probably the biggest challenge outside of the costs was bringing the rugby back. So from an outside-in perspective, when I came in, one of the first things I did was start this expression of interest to getting back into the champ. And the expression of interest was based around financial rigour and the ability to fund a team, size of audience, stadium, so we were in a brilliant place, we're very obvious outlier. And obviously I've got very, close relationships with Prem Rugby and everything from previous lives and everything else. So if I was in the pub, I'd be saying to somebody, this should be a shoe-in, without being churlish, this should be a shoe-in. Why wouldn't they want us back? Because we will only add to the league, etc., etc. And, to be brutally honest with you, that took so long that it created massive problems for us because, firstly, we were not universally welcomed back in. Sure. I don't know if there were misconceptions about what we were doing, but we seem to have this tag of, these guys are buying their way back into rugby. Well, I'll tell you what, the only thing that we bought was the ability to pay off all of the creditors that we were left with from the previous bloody owners.
Yeah.
So we either did that or we started in level 10 and paid nobody, like London Welsh did and everybody else. Yeah. So we could have done that. So this kind of holier than thou kind of approach towards us from other clubs in our league was really disappointing, actually. And like at times, I'd say to Chris, look, you've really got to kind of bite your tongue here, because all that we were trying to do was the right thing. Pay debts from previous, try and bring a brilliant club back as high as we possibly could. And we were getting a lot of stick for it. And we got to a point where we thought, do you know what? Ignore the haters now. Ignore them. Don't give them any option. They don't know. They're ill-educated. Move on. So that took a lot longer because what we thought would be a complete unanimous vote from the champ clubs wasn't.
Yeah. And
by the way, we know who the ones were, and we're quite bitter about it, but we're not going to tell you who they are. But yeah, we certainly take those into the games. And then we went through this long process, and we were hoping to get signed off much earlier, because when we actually got signed off, and this is in no way, shape or form an excuse, but when you get into March and you're then supposed to be having a pre-season 8 weeks later, I mean, the only employees that we could even try to bring in to the organisation had to be either out of contract, not in a job somewhere else. So immediately the market is a lot narrower than what what it was. So that made that quite difficult, because we had an absolute avalanche of people wanting to come from X club, but then we'd say, well, are you in contract at the moment? Yeah. Well, you can't come then. We were not going to go to clubs and start trying to buy people out of contracts or what else. There's also a perception that we were going to be kind of spending loads of money, we spend a third of what Ealing spend. We spend less than half of what Doncaster spend. So we're not even at that point. So I think there was a thought process that people thought was going to run away with the league with some superstar team, and the fact that we brought in a few ex-Premiership players, people probably got that perception. But the reason we brought in, my take on it was build a Premiership club from a coaching perspective. So strength and conditioning, medical, nutrition, the environment, make it amazing. So if a player's playing for another club and he's getting paid a modest amount of money, we'll offer them the same contract, but look at the amazing training facilities. Look at the coaching you're going to get. Look at the things we're going to try to do with you to help you in your post-training career that you may not get at your club. Not, here's a massive check. So there's a lot of perception versus reality. So what became very tough was every day, every week, every hour, I'd be kind of on the phone to the RFU and all bodies. When are we going to get a response? When are we going to get an answer? When's it going to happen? Do you know that every minute is making it harder and harder and harder for us? So that was disappointing and difficult to deal with. And it could have been a lot slicker. And it put us in a position where we were like, wow, we've got to move like yesterday. So there isn't one player that we have brought in that was in contract anywhere. So again, we had a perception of people were saying, oh, such and such was in contract at that club and they've nicked him. We didn't. Not one. Can hand on heart say not one player was in a contract anywhere. So yeah, that was a real challenge. There've been many, as I say, that some of the very unsexy stuff when you go into a part of the stadium that hasn't had anything in there for 3 years, and the boiler isn't working, the air vents don't work, the flooring is unsafe, the lifts needed, all these things, it's like having a massive house, and all of those things. Very hard to budget for those sorts of things. So that's been a challenge. But I would say physically getting the rugby back, and we had a lot of supporters and people quite rightly kind of getting a little bit anxious and maybe venting their anger a little bit in terms of why is it taking so long. And you have to bite your tongue as a kind of a leader in the organisation, because what you want to say is, yes guys, we're with you here, this is really, really annoying, it's taking forever, but that ain't helping us if we do that. So you've got to be really adult about it and accept that the angst from the kind of wider stakeholder base is based in a good place, but you've got to be realistic about, we're only going to wind up the people that are making these decisions if we start to go public with how we feel.
I personally think, given the lack of time that you had, you've put together a pretty amazing squad, and I think the way that you did it was great, with the Guess Who stuff, which really sort of engaged the client better, the customer base, the client, the supporter base, and I think certainly in terms of my own personal expectations for how Worcester Warriors were going to do this season, I think you've exceeded them, exceeded all of them. I think it's been amazing. Obviously there have been a couple of losses. I've been to every home game, and so I did see a couple we lost, but you've been in every single game. You've done really, really good, played some really exciting rugby. It's not probably at the standard of Premiership rugby, but it's really exciting, and there's some really good players on the field every match. So I've been really excited by it. So talking about the supporter base, obviously it's important for Worcester Warriors and for any rugby club, I suppose, to get the support of the local community. So for someone who's not really into rugby, maybe not been to Sixways before, never been to a match, how would you describe the match day experience for them so that we can possibly encourage them to come along?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we've gone big on match day experience. So we when you look at rugby's it's an interesting game. Rugby, I love rugby, always have. And I remember when my wife came to the first ever game of rugby she came to was when I was at Gloucester, and we were playing Sale. And Bill Beaumont was one of my guests. And for those that don't know, Bill Beaumont at the time was chair of World Rugby, ex-England legend, and general nice guy. And I said to Bill, I said, do me a favour. My wife's, she's from St Helens, Merseyside. It's rugby league territory. Doesn't really understand rugby union. Could you sit down and could you watch the game with you? And every now and then just bug you. And he said, yeah, of course. And he's lovely, Bill. So that's what she did. And then we were winning the game by 3 or 4 tries at one point. So I went down and watched the game next to them. And Helen, my wife, turned around to me and said, did you say this guy knows about rugby? I said, yeah. And she said, well, the first thing I asked him, and it was I think there was a scrum and somebody lost their bind or someone collapsed or something like that. And she said, Bill, what happened there? And I won't use the expletives, but he said, if I know. So, this is the, rugby's rugby. It can be quite complex, and we know that. So how do we ensure that there's something there for everybody? So on a match day now, we're working really hard, firstly with kids. So, we have free season tickets for kids under 12 years old in 95% of the ground. Okay, so if mum and dad want to come or whoever wants to come, they can bring the kids, and they haven't got to pay a thing. Okay, and as a father of young twins, I know if I take my kids to the cinema, it's costing me best part of 50 quid after I've messed about with whatever they're overcharging me for in there, or we took them for a bite to eat and whatever else. So it's amazing value for families. We then, in terms of the match day, we sold our stand actually. It's like an old kind of tarpaulin type stand to the Ospreys when I first came in. And we've opened up a huge area purposely to be a big fan zone. So we've got everything in there from Greek street food, Indian, local pies. We've got bao buns. We've got a kids area. We've got loads of bars. We have a stage with entertainment on every game, before the game, half time, after the game. Outside of, and for the kids, we've got face painting, and we've got a whole area where they can play with the rugby balls, and we have bucking broncos and all manner of stuff. And then we have the traditional bars for those who just want a nice pint of local beer and a pasty, as well in the Scrum Club, all the way through to very, very high end corporate hospitality, which is sold out for the season. All of our boxes and hospitality sold out for the season. And again, we have entertainment up there. So we try to do things very differently. And then also after the game, we have entertainment on in the fan zone again. We also have a food village in the south corner as well, with more food and drink options. We have a band on after the game as well. And we also open up the pitch. So one of the things that Matt Everard, the head coach, and I were very keen to do is to reconnect with the community. So win, lose or draw, at the end of the game, after we've done a little 5 minutes of media, we open up the pitch. And the kids are on, the mums are on, the dads are on, they're kicking balls around. And it is absolutely brilliant. Brilliant. Money can't buy sort of stuff. So I've got lots of friends now, because I'm here, that will come and watch because we're fairly local. And half of them are rugby noses, half of them aren't. And the ones that aren't just say, look, can we come down again? Because the girls are desperate to come down again, get their faces painted, wave a flag, meet the players after the game, and to play in the food village, have a bite to eat, and it gives us a couple of hours. So it's a fundamental full day now, and we've been we're trying to go a little bit off scale. We did a beer keller Oktoberfest in October. We did a St. Patrick's Day piece. We're doing a large end of season party after the Ealing game, which is the last game. And on that stage in the fan zone, we're going to bring all the players and the coaches on to engage with the supporters, etc. So, we have to be commercial. We need to try and keep people here as long as we physically can. But people will not do that if you don't make it worthwhile. They just won't. They'll have a pint at the local. They'll turn up and go. So one of the key performance indicators that we've got is spend per head. And I'm sorry to be brutal about it, but it is one of the metrics. And our spend per head for our supporters is the highest in rugby in England, more than Exeter, more than Gloucester, who are traditionally very high. And that's amazing. And we'd like to think that people aren't just staying around for a laugh; they're staying around because they're really enjoying themselves. We're putting on fan zones, we're putting on big experiences. Whenever there's international games on, we put them on the big screens and things. And we're also going to be setting up a fan focus group as well, because we haven't cracked it. We get good feedback, really good feedback actually, but what else can we do that's really going to interest people? So we're going to set up a fan focus group and really listen to what else it is that we can make people come here early for and stay a bit longer.
So that's fantastic. Thank you. So you talked a bit about, certainly one of the matches that we've got coming up. There's only 2 matches left at home this season. So we've got Bedford in just over a week's time, and then obviously the big last home game, as you mentioned already, against Ealing. So why are these 2 particular fixtures particularly important for the club?
Yeah, well, I mean, both of them are looking like they're going to sell out as well, which is going to be incredible. Just put that into context, we're turning up at some stadiums where they're getting 1,000 supporters. Cornish Pirates at the weekend was unbelievable. I swear 1 in 2 fans was Worcester, and there were 3,000 people there. We just took the place over. So why is it so important? Why are these games so important? So in the Champ, which is kind of tier 2 in rugby, you have a playoffs. So the top 6 go into the playoffs. 5 and 6 play each other. 1, 2, 3, and 4 get a bye straight into the semi-finals. If you finish in first or second, you get a home semi-final. The reason that's super important to us is that home semi-final for us would bring in much needed revenue and contribution. It's an all-ticketed affair, so season ticket holders, it isn't part of their package as well. So again, being very commercially honest with everybody, it's something that will help us against the cost of running the rugby and everything that goes with it. The league table is super competitive at the moment, which is brilliant, really brilliant. So we've got to play we've got 5 games left, 3 away, 2 at home. Our 2 home games are against the team at Bedford, who absolutely battered us at their place, by the way, at Christmas. It was the one game where we really didn't show up, and they were brilliant. So we've got to get our revenge back on that, and that'll be a really, really difficult game. They're excellent.
And they're the one place below us in the league, aren't they? I think
they're 1 point below us. Yeah. Ealing for the last game, they've gone unbeaten the whole season. We lost to them by a point, and we missed a kick to win the game. But we played excellently. So
great performance.
Yeah, and that will be a stonker because they are effectively a Premiership team with the amount of players and squad that they've got and what they spend on their team. So that'll be a good challenge for us. And then we, arguably we should be in the playoffs after those games in one way or another. We don't know if they'll be home, away, whatever that might look like, whether it's quarterfinals or semi-finals. But we need the supporters. And I know this sounds like one of those things that people say, but it honestly makes a massive difference to our team and our performance. The team talk on Tuesday, Thursday, and before the game last week, and Matt Everard won't mind me saying this, I told him how many supporters were planning to go down to Cornwall, and he was blown away, absolutely blown away. And he used it. He used it, and he said, literally used it to the guys. He said, guys, these people are taking days off work. These people have booked 3 or 4 days down here to watch you. You can make them have a brilliant weekend or a pretty naff weekend, sort of thing, and properly used it. And we had a huge team photo afterwards at the game with all the supporters on the pitch and everything else down at Pirate, just to kind of say thanks, really. So when the players come out and there's fireworks and there's a full crowd, honestly, I'm not kidding you. It's points. It's points on the board, and it helps us from a revenue perspective. And we're unashamedly, we want to retain as many of those people going forward for next year as well. So, if anybody out there hasn't been, it's a really reasonably priced day out. You'll have a great time. You'll get really well looked after. And if certainly for those people who've got kids as well, we've laid on so much that means you'll have a great day out, and hopefully we can get you hooked in, and you might become 2 games next year, 5 the year after, and think, actually, I'll get a season ticket the year after, because that's how we need to grow our fan base. Yeah. We're unashamedly different in how we operate now, because if we just do what's always happened, we'll just get the same fan base.
Yeah. No, fantastic. You mentioned the playoffs. So
Mm.
what are you playing off for? What's the end result of that? Is there something at the end of that playoff process, or what?
Well, Premiership Rugby. So, for those who don't know, Premiership Rugby is the league above. They've recently had a change of governance to say that there will be no promotion or relegation into and out of that league for the next 3 seasons. It's a little bit. We kind of understand it and don't at the same point. We're not ready to go into the Premiership anyway. So let's say we win the whole thing and we win a 2-legged playoff against a team at the bottom of the Premiership, which again is highly stacked against you. We wouldn't be ready. We've not got the squad.
Yeah.
We've not got anything ready to be in the Premiership. So we need a run at it anyway.
Yeah.
Is us again being really blunt and honest with where we're at. Secondly, commercially, if we were going to be in the Premiership, we will have already sold all of our sponsorship rights, commercial packages, season tickets, everything at championship level prices. So it would be completely incorrect. We wouldn't be ready to go, and it would be a very, very difficult season for us and quite a miserable season, I imagine. So we need a run at it. So we've got a few seasons to work out what that looks like from an investment perspective to come in. Because if we went into the Premiership as well, we'd have to find a salary cap of 6-7 times what we pay now. There's an entry level of around £20 million to buy the P shares. The P shares sit as an asset on your balance sheet, and you can derive central income. Sorry if I'm boring anybody here, but you can derive central income from the governing body, television rights and things, against that. But you've got to have that cash in the first place. And again, going back to what I said at the very start, we won't risk this place going into administration again by overstretching. So if we do want to get into the Premiership as well, that might be a conversation for what does inward investment look like. So to answer your question, Steve, where we are in terms of this year, what have we got to play for? We've got to play for trying to win the league, like pretty much everybody else does. And if you ever worked in elite sport, you want to win every game. There isn't anything that, if somebody says, well, there's no promotion for a couple of years, how's that going to impact? Well, it ain't going to impact the players and the coaches. I can tell you now that's not what they get out of bed to try and win every game. So the ideal scenario for us is to get into the semi-finals of the playoffs, to win that, get into a final and win that as well. In our first year, to come back into the champ and, win the league at, our very first attempt. We wouldn't be favourites. What did good look like for us at the start of the year? If we could get into the playoffs, we started very late. We're not spending as much as certain teams, so we're probably in and around where we'd really, really hope to be. Still a lot of rugby left to be played, but no, we are playing to try to win every game to win the league, which would be an incredible achievement in year one. If that doesn't happen, then clearly we're going to try and do it again next year. And I think with a team that's played together more, and a second pre-season under its belt, etc., I think we will naturally grow as a group of players, and there won't be enormous ins and outs. We'll be announcing our new players in the next couple of weeks that are coming in and those that are leaving, but hopefully the fact that we'll have a nice structure, Matt will know more about what his best team is, should see us kick on again.
No, brilliant. That's really, really good information. Thanks for that. So at the club, it's not just about match days. You obviously got the end of season awards dinner coming up. So who is that event aimed at, and what kind of experience can people expect from it?
Yeah. We've actually got loads of things. This is part of our. So we kind of looked again and said, right, what can we do at this venue to ensure that it's contributing and people are travelling here for the right reasons? For example, we have nobody from the Birmingham business community that really uses this place. And if I was in the Birmingham business community, I'd much rather use this place than some of the places they have to use, again, with the location, it's only half an hour down the road, etc. So there's a big project on at the moment, how we can try to fill the venue. So we've just announced the Sixways Summer Series, which has got things like, dueling pianos. We've got Taylor Swift tributes. We've got cinema on the pitch. All manner of things, which are for everybody, literally everybody. For my wife and kids and family and nieces and nephews, coming in the summer, bringing a picnic blanket, watching a film. I mean, amazing, absolutely amazing. We're going to do comedy nights, all that good stuff. We're going to be announcing 2 pitch concerts as well in the next couple of weeks. But the end of season awards dinner is something that I didn't realise actually when I came here, that Worcester didn't do them previously. I'd assumed that they did. And what it is effectively, it is an evening of celebration. It's an evening for supporters to rub shoulders with the players partners, the sponsors, the coaches, in a really formal-ish environment where we will celebrate the journey, we'll celebrate this year, best tribe, best player, coaches player, supporters player, community player, etc. Brilliant food. In fact, we did the food tasting last week with Brooks caterers. Wow, river beef and beautiful. And we're going to have some really good entertainment on the night. We're going to get Donncha O'Callaghan, a former player who's really loved here. He's flying over from Cork to come and do a bit of a Q&A and an after dinner with us and all that good stuff. And we're going to have an after dinner party with a DJ. So again, different to what other clubs do. So who's it aimed at? Obviously, a lot of our corporate guests have already booked up. A lot of our sponsors have already booked up. And a lot of our supporters are now starting to book up. So it's bookable online. It's priced at £90 a head. Don't know if that's deemed as expensive or cheap, but we looked at other clubs, a Northampton, a Gloucester, a Harlequins, whoever, Bristol. They're all in the 120s, 150s. So we thought we'd pitch it lower to try to get as many supporters to come to the night as well. It's not a money-making kind of night. It's a night to try and break even and just celebrate what's been a really super unique year. It's also raising money for the Worcester Warriors Foundation, who've done some incredible work and still do. Carol Hart and the team. So we're doing raffles on the night, and we've got one of the guys from Antiques Roadshow is going to be coming and doing the auction, raising money again for the foundation. So it's aimed at everybody that wants to come along and have a great night, dress up to the nines, rub shoulders with the people that they've supported all year, and have a great old knees up, really. So yeah, it's if anybody that can come along. I think we've already sold more than 250 places, and we've probably got a capacity of about 400. So if anyone wants to come along, get on the website and have a look.
Brilliant. Sounds fantastic.
Right,
So this podcast obviously is Worcestershire Ambassadors Podcast. It's generally aimed at the sort of the wider Worcestershire business community.
Yeah.
So what kind of role do you think Worcester Warriors can play in supporting the wider Worcester business community?
Yeah, I think there's a number. I mean, the venue's an obvious one. I would definitely ask anybody genuinely that wants to, who hasn't thought about having their Christmas party here or their leadership event or whatever, from box hire all the way up to 2,000 people in the fan zone. We're doing everything. And one of our new sponsors that we haven't announced yet is doing their summer festival. We're putting our music in the fan zone. We're doing stuff on the pitch with them, etc. Come and speak to us about how we can work with you, at this iconic venue to engage with either your clients or to engage with your workforce. We know there's no such thing as a kind of off the shelf now. Whenever we speak to partners, they'll say, well, what do we get for this amount of money? And we say, what are your objectives? Is it a CSR play? Is it a staff engagement play? Is it to physically be rubbing shoulders with other people in this kind of, B2C area or B2B area, introductions, etc. So for people out there that want to network, we have business network breakfast every quarter. We have a multitude of offerings in terms of the physical venue, and also, in terms of what we can do as well. There's a lot of outbound stuff that we can do. So, with our players, with our kind of assets, I guess, our players, coaches, we're doing a residential camp, for example, in Malvern next week. And our players and coaches are all out there. We often go out to businesses and we do talks on leadership, strength and conditioning, nutrition, all of those things. So there's a lot of things that we can do in a broader sense around the community. What I'd say is talk to us. Get in touch with either Jill Wood, our commercial manager, myself directly. Just talk to us. We're really, really open. There's so much we can do here, but potentially can do for you as well by using our assets. You'd be surprised how open we are around what we do. And for example, this week we've got a business coming in. They're doing a leadership conference for their top 200 performers. And as part of that, as a bit of a breakout session, we're doing line outs with them. talking, but it links into their objective around communication.
Yeah.
And things. So, in a fairly vanilla world that we're in now, and we're the same, by the way. We go off. We were at the RAF. We were at RAF Cosford on Tuesday last week doing a session with the RAF. We do stuff in Hereford with the 2-2. We go and play behind closed doors at Bristol and Gloucester and Bath to change things up. So if people want to change things up in their environment here, or we can kind of come to them as well. But talk to us. So much here, and if you haven't looked at the venue for a while, it's brilliant. It's better than where I've ever worked before. And as I say, everything from box hire all the way up to holding your Christmas party here.
Yeah. So I actually I went to an awards dinner at Sixways a month or two ago.
Yeah.
And it was a fantastic event. Really enjoyed it. So I can definitely second all of that.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're probably going to have to sort of think about wrapping it up fairly soon. So I guess thinking about if you were going to be sitting here again in let's say sort of 3 years' time, what would you hope that we'd be saying about the club and its place in Worcestershire?
It's a good question. I think in 3 years' time, I think what success would look like is, in no particular order, the development well underway, potentially with a couple of drive-throughs open, maybe some light industrial open, and well down the way in some of the work, which would mean that we were physically taking yield in for that, which we could invest in the business. A well-established, high-performing rugby unit, which is being invested in more than currently because of the aforementioned development, which will help us invest in and around that. And what I mean by in and around that doesn't necessarily mean throwing another £1 million at the playing squad. What that may mean is having a development pathway for our schools in the area. You talked about Osh, Malvern, Kings, RGS, Bromsgrove, etc. Working with schools to find the latest, Ted Hill or Finn Smith or Matt Kvesic or Chris Pennell, whoever it might be. Investing much heavier in the community as well, working in some of the areas where the club probably hasn't worked before, and helping in those deprived areas alongside the foundation. And a venue that is rocking and rolling, is a destination. Now it will have had 2 or 3 years of big concerts, 2 or 3 years of big summer events, and is breaking even and making money in its own right. So a self-sustainable, profit-making destination generation with a successful, high-performing team, either in the Champ or the Prem, depends on what happens in the macro environment around investment, etc. And a really well-engaged, proud supporter base that are having a great time on a match day. They feel engaged in the community, whether that's school, whether it's in the wider network, a business community that feel that they've got a two-way conversation with the largest sporting entity in the area. Just a really, really happy and engaged workforce that want to be here, and a bigger workforce that has had to be widened due to the demand on the various parts of the business. So I think that's what success would look like for us.
That's brilliant. Thanks for that. So thanks for everything today. And so open and covering quite a lot of areas. Obviously, I wish you the big best success going forward. I look forward to seeing Warriors succeed on the pitch, but also off the pitch. I think like you've said, I think it's a great resource for the county, and I'd like to see more people make use of it. So, really excited to see how that develops, and all, as you say, all the developments around the stadium. Again, as you mentioned early on in the chat, bringing a lot more to the city. Bringing a lot of money in, people visiting. Great for local businesses, and great for Worcester Warriors. So thanks very much, and all the best.
It's a pleasure. Thanks, Steve.
Cheers.